in a boot?
No, I'm in a shoe.
A shoe?
So, I'm like, yeah.
Did you do that playing adult lacrosse?
No, I was going up the steps and it only caught, just, so it's like a black horse down there. So, if there's a fire, Carl has to carry me out.
He can easily throw you over his back.
Well, I'll just decide. So we're gonna stick, nothing's being pulled from the consent agenda?
No?
You're good? Or approve it on consent?
But don't trust him. Listen to us do the motion first.
Yeah.
You go home and then we're like, oh.
Now that they're gone.
We first convene the meeting and take the vote. Trust but verify.
It's happened.
We'll be ready to roll. So welcome to this regular monthly meeting of the Charlottesville Board of Architectural Review. Staff will introduce each item, followed by the applicant's presentation, which should not exceed 10 minutes. The chair will then ask for questions from the public, followed by questions from the BAR. After questions are closed, the chair will ask for comments from the public. For each application, members of the public are each allowed 3 minutes to ask questions and 3 minutes to offer comments. Speakers shall identify themselves and provide their address. Comments should be limited to the BAR's purview, that is, regarding only the exterior aspects of a project. Following the BAR's discussion and prior to taking action, the applicant will have up to 3 minutes to respond. So first up, matters from the public not on the agenda or on the consent agenda. Anybody tuning in? Okay. So we'll move on to the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
All right. Everyone in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great.
And so, for everyone out there on Channel 10, with the consent agenda, the COA was approved for the driveway at 712 Ridge Street, using the motion that's in the staff report. The COA for the replacement of the windows at 516 Ridge Street is approved, and the COA request for 300 Court Square, the COA is approved for the portico addition and the rear deck, and with the language proposed in the staff report for the motion for approval. So those, all three are good to go. We have no deferred items, and we had no new items, but just to follow up with the rest of you, I spoke with the chairs last week. We had a request for 218 West Market Street to come back. The application was not complete in regards to the things I had asked for, but I told the applicant that it's, I appreciate their interest in continuing to move forward. I said, but I just cautioned that to be respectful of the BAR's position, that we all want to try and help move things forward, but at some point the conversations just becomes an endless conversation. So I urge them to develop their drawings more so that it could be an application that I could accept as complete to bring forward to you all. I had also offered.
And just to.
Yes, ma'am.
This is the heirloom development, what we've been calling the Artful Lodger project, for lack of a better word.
Right. And the owner is not Heirloom, but Mr. Levine has been the face of the development, so I don't know what the composition of that team is, but the owner is a family in Richmond. Similarly with the 10th and Wortland project, which you all had some discussion with, we know the circumstances on that and some deadlines relative to affordable housing funding that they're seeking, but they weren't ready to bring anything forward tonight, so we'll likely see that in May. And then I had on other business, I have not, I don't have this officially, but I will say it. And Ms. Lewis, you've been asking this, and I appreciate you asking. In consultation with legal, they view the COA extensions as you get a 12-month extension, and then after that, so from here on, if someone wants an extension and they've, in addition to any extensions that have currently been approved, that can only be allowed either the COA expires, or they can secure that validity period by certain actions as laid out in the ordinance, or they can return and ask under a new COA request. So that's...
Are you saying no extensions at all? One, but no,
correct.
under Virginia law, that's how it was.
Yeah, and so that's the interpretation, and
So in other words, I was correct, are you trying to say, when pointing that out to the city? Because it was asserted that I was wrong.
No, I just said that that's what we have been doing, so, but I was gonna ask legal where they were. However it's been done, and for whatever reason, I know COVID made things really odd for a while, but that is just like legal determined that we can't do incremental COAs, their instruction now is you can request an extension and indicating one. So,
Both the city code and the Code of Virginia say there can only be a 12-month extension period.
well,
I'm just saying, and I'm not, I don't.
Yeah, I'm not arguing.
I mean, we haven't had a city attorney, and,
Right.
it's not on any of staff here, but that
To clarify, though,
proceeded.
once you have an approved site plan, though, it sticks with the site plan?
Mhm.
So, and that's good for, what, 5 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I said, it's likely that, it's sort of, as I came in 2018, it was sort of like, well, here's how we do things, and I did it as sort of, that was told to me, but from here forward, this is the interpretation of that.
So, so then what happens if it goes beyond the second year?
Well, if it goes beyond, they have an option to, the applicant, the remedy is to request, reapply for a COA. So
Just
it's
like-
not a
Full
no.
Just like
reapplication?
these applicants had to tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't affect them. It has nothing to do with them. It's just, so that's, but moving forward, so, and we have, there's been quite, I have a couple projects that for various reasons have been extended, and so from here on now, and it said, to be clear, it's not saying, oh, now you're suddenly, you can't do something. No, the remedy is to apply for a COA. And I was, after the conversations we've been having the last couple months, I was leaning towards, well, there's a threshold at which, I'm gonna say we're going to the BAR no matter what. So, but I hopefully will have the final, whatever the specific from legal is, but I don't have that at that point, but I wanted to share that with you. The,
Thank you.
144 Chancellor Street, I had to bump that now to the first meeting in May, yeah. So, and I can update you on that as we get closer. Mr. Timmerman and I have talked, he probably appropriate for him to be there as the chair that evening.
Not Mr. Zemer?
What's that?
Not Mr. Zemer?
He participated via email that night. Yeah, he wasn't there, remember? He had.
I meant for May, for when this so it's already gone before council?
No, it'll go on
sorry.
that first Monday in, whatever the first Monday meeting is.
So James isn't available as our chair?
Well, I say because he presided over the meeting, I figured.
I read his.
You got double jeopardy.
Yeah.
You got no good deed punished.
We read his notes, but he wasn't present.
Jeff, I want to go back to 218.
Yes, sir.
What were, I forget, what were the changes that you wanted?
So there weren't any changes, and this is, and I'll read, well, I shouldn't say I'll read from the code, because I'll flip back and forth for it, but we have a standard, the procedure for me bringing something to you all is that, and I will cite from the code, and section 5.2.1 C, point 3, 4B, under completeness determination. An application is considered complete when it contains all the information necessary to decide whether or not the application will comply with the applicable requirements of the code. So this is where, and I'll use an example of the 200 West Main, where the applicant wants a certain height. And at times, folks would say, well, he should just submit something, let the BAR deny it, and then go appeal to council. Well, you all don't see it unless and I mean, it's very rare, but if I don't think it's a complete application, I'm not bringing it to you for action. That's where you've seen in the last couple months where I'll say, this isn't ready, but I try not to make the decision on whether you all are willing to discuss it. Because even at, like we had, I'm sorry, the months are merging together in my head. So if I think there's something to benefit from, even in that, we're not sure what to call it, but an informal discussion, no action will be taken, then I'll talk about that. And that's where I said I talked to the chairs about 218, whether to bring it forward. In the past, it had been sort of, if someone gets something in by the deadline, then they assumed it would be get on the next meeting agenda, and I took a lot of pride in making sure those things kept moving. But some of these larger projects, we've seen, I have great illustrations of what your building's going to look like.
Excuse me.
But I don't have measured drawings. I don't have an elevation. I don't have wall sections. You haven't told me, what the materials are. So the difficult position I'm in is that I have to decide, is this complete or not? And it's not always, sometimes it's crystal clear, but sometimes it's a little fuzzy. So, and in this case, some very basic information they need to provide. So it hasn't been changes. It has been how have they presented the information that will allow you all to make a decision. So that's where we are. And I did talk to Jeff Levine, and I said to him that relative to 218, I said, now when Mr. Pinio came in, and I know he took up a lot of time, I said, but I don't think anybody on the BAR was actually troubled because it was really interesting, the perspective he brought. I said it was a very good lesson in sort of seeing them all and how, that extension of the wall. I said, however, while it was a very interesting conversation, it didn't present what we needed to make a decision on the design. So that's where we are. Does that make sense? And then buried my agenda. So I really want to keep you guys as short as possible tonight, but I do have some, is it sticking out of my head?
Are we on bullet point 3?
Yeah,
confused.
please
Yeah.
tell me what I,
Have we started that?
I believe so.
Was the last-
Section 34.5, does that have to do with the limit?
okay, I'm going to close my eyes and count to 10, and then it's going to appear right in front of me. Here it is. So the third bullet, and I need to draft something for this, but when it says, for example, for applications that have been previously been reviewed by the BAR, if the BAR has authorized final review by the administrator, and then it used to, then for number B, applications for new construction or accessory buildings or additions or alterations to primary structures determined to be minor alterations by the BAR. That had, in our prior code, said after consultation with the BAR chair, or the BAR chairs. And this is, again, these are for minor historic reviews, so not, something, a large project that I bring to you. So I'm going to see if I can resolve this with a policy adjustment. And so I just wanted to ask you before I drafted that up. So just taking the first one, applications that have been previously reviewed by the BAR, if the BAR has authorized final review by the administrator, would you all be comfortable if, and obviously I'm not going to just change it myself, but to treat that as that review it's been discussed by. We've had, if I brought something to you all and you say, and you have said, Jeff, I think you know what we're fine with you okaying that, or yeah, something, that fence type of thing, where I brought it to you as a question.
I think unless, I'll start on this. There are often times when we qualify a statement with certain things we want to see or certain issues we want to see resolved. So I don't know if there's ever a case where you're doing the final review administratively, but then there's also these kind of qualifications linked to that. Maybe that's a distinction to be made, but if we as a board ask to see a brick color or some kind of a mock-up or whatever it is to follow up upon a review, I think we should all have it. We should be able to see it and give them a chance.
That's a good point. And so yeah, it's that. Because I don't want to cross the line and just say, well, yeah, I ran into Mr. Timmerman on the mall and he said he was good with it. But there are, and again, this is primarily for these minor historic reviews, and what happened is where there had been clarity within the conservation districts, things got kind of lumped together, and whereas in conservation districts, all I had to do was ask the BAR chairs, and they've changed it to by the BAR. So I'm betting chairs just got left out of there, but did you have any issues with that process in the past? If that's a fair question about that.
No.
All right. Now I'm going to draft something and see if we can get that in as a policy. I left my list in my office, but I wanted to share with you just a couple of things looking forward. We have, there's a large project that's been brought up on West Main Street, in that empty lot, just as you cross the bridge.
Finally.
Is that?
I just said finally. I mean, that the city's been hoping for something up there for
Yeah, I know. And the only thing that, and it came up in a pre-development conference, is I raised that this sits up about 50, 60 feet above the 10th and Page neighborhood, and that to really be cognizant of, I said, on the front side, the height probably wouldn't, anybody would ask. I said, but on that back side, and I
Is this the-
referred to,
sorry.
what's that?
Is this the Dabney parking lot or is this the train station?
It's the yeah, the parking lot there, and on the north side of West Main. So, but so I just said
Less
that
exciting.
the shadow, I think, will be an issue, and they were responsive to that. We'll see when that comes forward. You have, I expect, well, I know one application has already come in, and it is for 1301 Wirtland Street, and it's to raise the Wertenbacher House.
Raise the what?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So that's, will likely be coming to you in May. In some ways, it's like an easy one. I mean, it's one of the oldest houses in the city. This is the brick house on Wirtland that's set back. And it was, I think it was the first or second librarian at the university built it. But it likely dates to around 1830, but, so
Does that mean the project that we approved to wrap it is dead?
I haven't been able to piece that together yet, but just so you know
The same
that
applicant, or
Hmm?
is it the same applicant as?
it's the same owner. So,
And this address
So they never did
is,
the apartment?
They never did the apartments, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, my gosh.
and then at the opposite end of Wirtland Street, at 10th and Wirtland, there's 3 houses in a row. I think one is in the late 1800s and then 2 are 1920s. There's a development been proposed that would require raising those. So.
You mean it would be across the street from the new?
So it's going to be,
wow.
Well, then you don't have to worry about the streetscape anymore.
yeah. So,
Did the university secretly buy all 3 of those recently?
no. But, speaking of things that are surprises, so I've been getting calls for the Federal Executive Institute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently that's been shuttered and
Oh, yeah.
property's up for sale. And it's I must say, who's the architect? I always think Ray Bradbury, not so there are some buildings in there that are eligible for the National Register, but it's entrance quarter, wouldn't affect you, but yeah, so. The first time when people ask me, they'd say, well, what do you think? I'd say, well, have you asked UVA?
Yeah.
Man, I'm surprised they haven't swooped it up yet, but so those are some things that are coming up.
Didn't we review one of those houses, one of the 3 houses you're referring to down?
You may have long ago, but not in my time.
Yeah.
One of them, like 20 years ago, the property owner wanted to move it closer to the street. I just
Yeah.
remember that happened when I was in grad school. I think that was the last time that one moved
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, Wirtland's, yeah, so it's, some of these things are gonna be coming to a head, relative to, I think the city deciding which direction does it wish to go. And then, so that's what I've got coming, and then sort of admin reviews that we've knocked out lately. There's, and I know I'm supposed to report to you on all of these, but there's a bowling alley going in at the northwest corner of the Dairy Central building, and they're doing some work on their patio outside, but it's not a cafe space, so I don't treat it like that, but there's some things they want to do, nothing permanent, so I've okayed that administratively. What else did we have that I had on my list that's in my office? I don't think there's anything of consequence. So the last thing I wanted to do and really take 15 minutes, half hour, and is that you all are, as you know, required to do an hour of training every year. And that is in order for the city of Charlottesville to maintain its CLG status. And as we are a certified local government. In fact, there's even a plaque down on the wall underneath the clock. And certified local governments are it's a federal program and it's administered by the state, but essentially we have a historic ordinance, we established historic districts, we established a board of architectural review to review those historic districts. And then part of that requirement is that you all, every year, have 1 hour of training relative or germane to your job.
I remembered one of the minor admin reviews.
The what?
The mosaic at University Circle, the terrazzo.
Oh, that's right.
Thank you. I'm gonna go back to that. So so what I've decided to do is, last month, we had a discussion for about a half hour on our process. Tonight, I'm gonna talk 15, 20 minutes about conservation districts, and I'll just keep track of that. And so next February, I won't have to chase you all down for your training. Do you have your street view? Can you pull that up?
Yes.
So,
Stop sharing.
we have a couple things coming that I'm not sure what to do with. One of them is over on University Circle, there's a terrazzo floor on the outside going into the entrance, and it's also then continued on the inside. And then there's a tile mosaic around the edge of that. They've had some structural issues. I think they're going to remove the slab. So it's like, well, do we replace it? And I'm going to have to do some, I think I may have sent you all a note about.
You did.
What do we,
Yeah.
and I didn't realize when I sent that it is actually a terrazzo, so it's not like somebody did an inlay into the concrete. It was put there and then they grind it down. So I'll need to look at how, I mean, that's one of those, it is a nice feature, but you say, well, do you have to replace something if it's removed? I'm going to do a little more homework on that. The other one that I'm getting is, to drive my car.
Before you go there, Jeff,
What's that?
do they have to replace it because they're gonna, like, there's other portions of the building they want to repair that it's in the way? Like, are they waterproofing under it, or?
I think they're not certain to the, what they're going to find.
Okay, so I'm just kind of wondering if they can just, isn't there a way that you can insert, like, expanding foam under concrete, make it kind of pop back up?
I'm not sold on that, because that assumes that, oh, look, there's a truck there, of course. Actually, that may
It's
not
not
be
it.
it. But that assumes that you've solved whatever problem you're dealing with.
Uh-huh.
So that's why because I was asked about that on a sorority house over on the other side of Rugby. And I said, well, yeah, they can jack it up, but something's going on underneath that caused this to lose, whatever, stability. So figure that out before, So, yeah, this is that. This is the porch right here, and it's got this, band going around it. So I think they're trying to figure out, what are we dealing with here? But I'm gonna have to do some homework on, at what point does it tip the scale of, replacing kind, or, But the other one that am going to be asking you all about is, and then we're gonna talk about conservation districts.
So this will be on the docket next month?
I don't know yet. I need to do a little more homework.
Okay.
By just sharing with you, that's the background of my question that I had asked you all. So, interesting situation here. We have the church at Ridge in West Main, a congregation will be, has been in renovating it, doing things. There, found out in the 50s, there used to be a stained glass window in this opening here. It was broken and it was plastered over. It's even in the historic survey. Sherry, I think maybe you pointed out. There was something you found in the survey.
Yeah, it was a window.
Yeah.
And it was,
So,
somebody broke it in the 1950s, and this was a black church in the 1950s, and we can only deduce,
yeah,
you know, a white church would have probably installed another stained glass window. A black church not wanting the window to be broken again would have put this wood insert in it.
it's
sad.
Yeah, it's a thread I'd love to, I want to even tug at and see if we can find out more about it. So the congregation that would be going in here has not asked to put in a new stained glass window because on the inside, the wall's been covered up. So it would be installing stained glass, but backlit. And so but it's a church that, this would be a sign for the church, so it has to meet the sign regs. But I'm sort of stuck on, even if it did, is it appropriate to change this opening? And I'm not sure where to come down on this yet. And I'm not sure how to even phrase it to you all, but this is, one of the types of questions that we get of how to treat this. And I'm leaning towards they can do something if it meets the sign regs, and that we know that if they vacate the structure, that it this trim, this piece that was there gets replaced. I'm leaning in that direction, but I need to do some
It
more
seems
homework.
like a reasonable direction,
Yeah.
frankly. Why not put a stained glass backlit in there?
And so, now, there is another project around the corner where someone wants to do some artistic stained glass panels. And I've responded that, well, you're introducing something that wasn't there, and backlight lighting, it's not artwork now, you're suggesting windows where there were not windows, so.
Was there any discussion of why not just turn it back into a window?
I don't know what's going on the inside. It very well been a high ceiling that's now a floor up there. I don't know what the circumstances are inside. My guess is they want this to be an illuminated sign, and not. Most stained glass windows are experienced from the inside, not the outside. So.
I mean, you keep saying it has to adhere to the sign ordinance. And maybe this is covered by that, but are you allowed to do
Yes.
an illuminated sign?
Oh.
Because that's basically what this is. It's just glass instead of plastic.
Well, we don't know yet, because we don't have the
Yeah, I still
specs
need
yet
to
for
get.
sign.
Yeah, I know what exactly, but you're right. Is it internally lit sign? How's it? I don't have that answer.
And if that is allowed by the zoning code now, because I guess I don't know what our signage regs say anymore. I don't know how I feel about an illuminated sign.
Did they say
I
illuminated?
made the joke about it looking like Publix, but it does kind of.
Well, my concern would be that it would be obviously over illuminated. You do appreciate the stained glass from the inside, but there is something about driving by a church at night and then seeing the glow through the stained glass, and it would be kind of it would be a little incongruous to have a really, if the backlight was really loud and bright, it could be a detriment, I think, to the
Yeah, so I said,
Experience.
struggle with it. but-
It looks like to the left of the image, if you go down, kind of scroll down, there's you have to sort of pan, yeah. There's like a signboard
So,
there
yeah.
on the corner.
Mhm.
Are they planning to use that as a sign?
So that's where the question becomes, you know, how many signs and what's the cumulative area, et cetera, et cetera. So one of the things, Reed Broadhead, the zoning administrator, had an intern, spent some time, last couple of weeks, taking the new sign ordinance and breaking it down and going to our guidelines and saying, all right, where do we have conflicts? And the old sign ordinance used to almost specifically refer to the guidelines. In fact, there were places where the design guidelines were part of the ordinance. That's been stripped out. So sort of like the situation we had with the coffee place. Yeah, so we're going to identify where there are some potential conflicts, and we're going to have to solve that. But yeah, I mean, it would be, if they propose signage here, it would be saying, you know, what is your total signage? Is that under what you're requesting even?
I have a possible wrinkle here. There's something called the Freedom of Religion Act,
I checked on that, yes.
and it may not allow you to tell them what they can put up for signs.
My understanding is that's,
I don't know.
yeah, I checked on that, because there was, and I got an answer, so that wasn't, and it got technical, so I can't repeat enough to be correct, but I was told that's not an issue here.
Okay.
So, but I appreciate you asking that. So, wait and see. It's always something interesting going on. Anything else on that list that popped in your head?
The trouser one, because that was just really interesting.
The what?
Not the Point Church side.
Oh,
It was just
the
really-
surfboard
I'm so used to
things.
seeing their logo everywhere, so.
Yeah, I did, you know, Carl's comment about the Publix, it was kind of funny, knowing and having, yeah.
Yeah.
We got secret information up there.
Stop sharing.
There was
That's the infamous portal.
you also sent an email about some doors on the downtown mall, entryways over.
Oh, yes,
The-
roast soup.
Yeah, we solved that one, somewhat. Well, so there's, if you go into Revolutionary Soup, and it's a 48-inch opening, so two 24-inch door leaves, and someone was determined to get in, and they got in, and then like was cold and started a fire, and burned the staircase, and so it's like but why I shared it with you primarily was that the comment came to me, the owner said that they've asked the BAR, and the BAR has refused to allow them to fix the doors. And so I went and checked, and I get these all the time. People, oh, well, BAR. I think, well, I've looked and there's been no applications for you. So I thought it was really interesting to see, I can't remember what the number was that I said for total approvals, but then, you know, what, something like 80 denials. Yeah, so it's I just wanted to share that with you all, because it is that, I know you may also hear it, but Kate was she thought it was such a great note. She said, I'm framing this and putting it up in my office. So if you guys, you know, anybody has a coupon at Michael's, share it with Kate for framing. So what I wanted to, sorry, Kate has actually moved her office across the hall, and I keep forgetting she's now a few doors down from me, so I'll walk over to the other side, and we have to go, you know, through our Get Smart doors to get there, and then, so.
Usually I find you, because you're just like rushing past, and I'm just like, chat from here.
We'll fight each other. So, why is that, is the camera pointing in?
It's off center.
All right, don't worry about it. So, so give me 15 minutes to just, and some instruction here that, and, you know, I think Kate and Jerry, maybe this will be new and helpful to you. Roger, I don't know if we've had this conversation. I know Carl will say he'll fall asleep because this is old stuff, but it's all part of your training. And so I briefly wanted to talk about the city's historic conservation districts and why, and what your purview is and why. And I'm going to set my thing for 15 minutes. So we have, and it's not really, maybe this was a better screen. So we've got, within the city of Charlottesville, we have 8 ADC districts, architectural design control districts, established by city code. And those are the green when you look on the GIS map. We have also 3 historic conservation districts that were established in the city: Woolland Mills Village, Martha Jefferson Neighborhood, and Rugby Road. And it really came out of, this happened, I know because of Jane Fisher and some others I know that had this idea 2008, 2009, when Martha Jeff was leaving and you were seeing some of that encroachment and changeover of the buildings. So the neighborhood wasn't enthused about an ADC district. So Mary Joy explored, I'm sorry, I'm not speaking. Mary Joy explored something that more of a historic district light, and these are the conservation districts. It was followed by folks in Rugby Road, wanted one there, and then Woolland Mills Village in 2017, although there was a little more tension over that one, but eventually it was approved. And so, next slide. So, and then the third thing we have in the city, and we've lost some and added some, I think it's 77 individually protected properties. And you know, as I always tell people, like my house here is it's not within a district, and so by and large these are older properties, older structures that didn't fall within the boundaries of one of the ADC districts. And then go to the next slide. But you do see that in some cases, like over here, like Windhurst, was an IPP. So some of these are IPPs, but then are within ADC districts. Doesn't change anything. It doesn't mean it's a double protection. It has 2 designations, and one of those being is if we could go and remove the IPP designation, but if, let's say, the city decided to do away with the ADC districts, so at least there's 2 levels of protection on it now. We have several addresses that are IPPs within conservation districts. Those are treated at the more rigid level. So if it's an IPP within a conservation district, then it's reviewed under the ADC district guidelines. Next slide. I get this question a lot, even internally. Somebody's doing something in North Belmont that didn't bring it to you. That's fine. North Belmont, the Fry Spring, and Fifeville Tonsler, those are historic districts on the National Register. They do not have a local district corollary. Now, Martha Jeff does. I really love the name. Downtown is the Charlottesville Albemarle Courthouse Historic District. Workland is on the National Register, West Main. Woolland Mills, although it's much larger. And by and large, these National Register districts align with our local districts, but not perfectly. But these, in and of itself, something being on the National Register does not mean we have purview. It just happens to be that our local designation overlaps with it. So, next slide. And same thing with, we have several individually listed sites on the National Register. Unless one of those falls within a local district designation, we do not have purview over it. And I know I've used this example, I used it this morning. Monticello out here is on a UNESCO site, every listing you can imagine. However, Albemarle County does not have a historic preservation ordinance. So if the Thomas Jefferson Foundation wanted to raise Monticello, not saying they would, but the county has no legal means to deny that demolition permit. There's no local ordinance that they could say, no, we can't allow you a demolition permit. You can't blow it up in a time of war based on UNESCO designation, but it really is that local designation in the state of Virginia, which allows us to have some say over alterations and demolitions. So my house, for example, is not on the state or national register, but it is locally designated, so therefore I have to come to you all. So does that help make some sense out of?
So every property that's on the Virginia and the National Register is an IPP though, right?
No.
Yeah.
No.
IPP is just local. Is that right?
So, and that's where, and every, go back a slide, and every national register, the National Register district are not. In fact.
So
I
why
know-
is North Belmont, Fry Springs, and Fikeville national and everything else local? Is it because
They-
everything else was local and then they wanted to fill in the gaps and so they made?
For tax credits, right?
No, well, it was more, it's anecdotal, but my understanding is, particularly in North Belmont, they said, we don't want to be in a district. We don't want to go to the BAR, but then the explanation, well, being on the National Register doesn't cause any of that. Oh, okay. So I think similar with Fikeville. But it was that very real concern that there would be people didn't want to be subject to BAR review. And
Did
we
these,
have-
did these other things, the Martha Jefferson neighborhood, Rugby Road, and Woolen Mills, they specifically asked to become conservation
so those
districts?
three conservation districts
Yes,
were all.
they were all organic
neighborhood
from the neighborhoods. And in fact, I mean, Carl would be able to say, but I think Fikeville and Tonsler was a hard no. They
Yeah.
absolutely said, no, we don't want to do that.
And so, and I wish I had included the map. So when I came on board 2018, Mary Joy had sort of left a list of where they needed surveys done. And the Little High neighborhood, which we completed, the Rose Hill district we completed, Star Hill was completed,
10th and Page.
and 10th and Page, which was it was about 450 properties, so it was a very expensive survey, but all of those were found eligible. So when we do a survey, the consultants will go through, do it's more of a windshield survey, it's not the deep dive. When you go to put something on the National Register, that's a much deeper dive. So we did the initial surveys for those neighborhoods, then the consultants will confer with Department of Historic Resources on whether it's eligible or not. And then it has to go, like, for example, all these, like Rose Hill and 10th and Page and Little High. We make a recommendation then to the state review boards, DHR's state review board, and Jody used to serve on that. They make an official determination whether or not the district would be eligible for the National Register. So it means now you can go back, and if you wish to submit a nomination for the National Register, we'll accept it. But it gets to where if you're going to do that, you need to, DHR used to say, you need to have a majority. It's now a significant majority of folks have to support that. In fact, even to the point where doing a survey is, they're very wary of pushback, and we dealt with that at 10th
And
Page.
why do the homeowners want it or not want it?
So there are different reasons, and I'll set that here for now. So we've completed a survey of, I think, all of the historic neighborhoods in the city. DHR is actually very interested in like Greenbrier, which has, really an interesting 1950s and 60s environment to it that they'd like to consider, but I don't know if that's possible. I mean, where Roger lives, I know you're not part of your neighborhood, is that in the Fry Spring district? your street?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't sure that. So, there's these really interesting old subdivisions around town that are unique. I've had, one of the things Mary Jo had said, that we'd always like to do South Belmont, but that's 1,100 properties. And it's about $100, $125 a property to budget a survey. So, I don't see myself having 100K to do a historic survey of that neighborhood. But, so we've done them, and then they're now eligible, but just like with the Little High neighborhood, I said to the neighbors, I will support you, I can provide some funds towards a National Register nomination, but you gotta bring it to me. I'm not gonna go in the neighborhood and knock on doors, and so it really, we want those neighborhoods to take ownership of it. And that's what did occur with, let me flip back now, that's what did occur with the 3 conservation districts. So the last thing, you go back to this one, so the last piece, go down. The other piece of the puzzle that the 3-legged chair that Kate and I sit on at the city, this one with you all, and then we also do design review in the entrance corridors. I don't know how many of you knew that, and the design review in those places is done by the Planning Commission as what's called the Entrance Corridor Review Board, although the acronym is ERB. I don't know why the C's not in there, but rolls off the tongue. I have a lot more freedom to review things in entrance corridors administratively. So the next thing, so going back to the 3 historic conservation districts, Rugby Road, Martha Jeff, Woolen Mills. One of the big differences, I used myself today, but be creative. So the ADC district guidelines are about 120, 150 pages now.
But they're not that old.
The new caption guidelines are like 18 pages.
Little drama.
Yeah. And the conservation district guidelines are, I think, 3 or 4 pages. So that's one of the big distinctions between the two, is that these are very short, limited. Sometimes that's a great thing. Sometimes it leaves things a little open-ended. But so we've got here the Martha Jefferson. I'll look up there. Martha Jefferson Historic Conservation District, established in 2010. It's 58 acres, 155 properties, including Maplewood Cemetery, which is interesting because I've never, I guess I could say if you are burying someone and putting a headstone, they should come to us for approval, but I've never been asked that, so I'm dodging it. But the period of significance for that district is late 1800s and to the mid-20th century. It's a range of architectural styles in there. I spent some time a couple weeks ago with folks from Fredericksburg interested in conservation districts. And when you get out into these places and sort of, I mean, we look at them piecemeal, but when you get out and walk around and look at them, you do see, it really is an interesting, there's a cohesiveness to this district that works. When you get further north, things start to spread out a little bit, but down near the hospital, it really is interesting how well it all ties together. The next one, all right, and then within each conservation district, this is a distinction between the ADC districts. There's a set of character-defining features which these neighborhoods have produced. So this is what came out of the discussions with the folks in the Martha Jeff neighborhood. They said, these are the things we think are important. Next one is Rugby Road District, 25 acres, 30 contributing structures, period of significance roughly the same as Martha Jeff, although the architectural style is a little more, not as vernacular as you see in other places. But what I think is really interesting about this district, and it's reflected in, you go to the next page, but you have these set back, deep set planted front yard. So there's this rhythm, you go back to the picture, and that, this is really what you all are charged with preserving and protecting. And this is one of those areas, that's me. This is one of those areas where we'll have to see how the ordinance works out, because, the ordinance very much wants things coming out to the road, and that's in conflict with these guidelines. The third district we have is, of course, Woolen Mills Village Historic Conservation District. That's the last one established. 56 acres, 67 contributing properties, including Riverside Cemetery. I don't know really how to describe this district, because the Milltown itself is actually down here in the county. So this is a National Register district, but it straddles the city-county line. Eclectic is the best word I can think of for the Woolen Mills district. And you can go to the next. So we don't get much out of this district, so we haven't had to think about it. But this is where, you get the 2 or 3 pages of guidelines, but this is what we really, when we get a conservation district, need to be taking in mind. This is what the neighborhoods want. This isn't like our other guidelines. This isn't from council. This is from those neighborhoods. So, next slide. So, it's, what's interesting is we've had now granted they've only been established for a couple of years, but really don't see a lot in these districts. And a lot of what we see, I can look at administratively. Primarily in a conservation district, I will bring to you, I have to bring to you demolitions, and demolitions of primary, it's not clear, but when someone wants to do something to a shed, I treat that separately from the house, the primary building on the structure. Or if someone wants to construct a shed, I don't treat that as a new building. But the objective of the conservation districts was primarily to have a means to tap the brakes for demolitions and to have at least some level of review for new construction. But by and large, we don't review something in a conservation district if you can't see it from the street. And I think there's some elements of conservation districts that would be worth considering for the ADC districts. I think there's some streamlining of these reviews that I think would be beneficial. I think people would be supportive of it.
And there is a new construction coming from Martha Jeff, right? That's the lot. They split their lot, they're gonna build.
Yes, we have something coming, but this is one where the guidelines, because the Martha Jeff neighborhood, they were very involved. We have some good instruction. You also have seen that large project that was proposed at the old Martha Jefferson Hospital site. So the scales coming, a little bit of flexibility. I think something might be coming back for Charlton Oak project, so we'll see how that goes. Then.
Can you go back to the last
Yeah.
slide, please?
Yeah.
So under required update,
Yes.
is that something that we need to do?
Yes, and so that's why I'm sort of teeing this up. The code, in fact, the old code, very specifically, because there was so much concern about, council was very careful in the conservation districts, and so they told, in 15 years, it's, we get to check it again and update it, and update the guidelines, and also revisit the list of contributing structures. Now, some of that was meant to be, if something was built in 1970 and didn't get included, maybe this time around it should be. Although, we're gonna have to go into these neighborhoods, or at least, certainly this one, we gotta figure out this year, and have that conversation with the folks in the community. And I don't know how that's going to go. There may be people saying, I don't want to be in the district at all, so.
Do they have community organizations that are set up now?
Some do, but, I mean, like, I have a North Downtown group. I have no idea who they are, or I don't know when they last met, so you can use them as the initial contact, but you really still have to reach out to everybody.
NDRA is still active. I
don't
get
like
notices.
notes.
Yeah, I mean, you're in that neighborhood. I'm not, I'm not saying that they have meetings monthly,
No,
but
it's-
there's certain leaders that are still, that you could send something to.
Right. And that's where it gets to, there are individuals in the neighborhoods who, like we had the situation with 10th and Page. It was like, yes, there were certain folks that were involved, but that didn't get us to everyone to communicate. So it's just something to be, we're going to have to be very diligent with it. And
We do have that software we've purchased, that the Parks Master Plan was done to engage the public, and we have access to that now, so that could be a method for.
Were the neighborhoods engaged during the development code process? Because
Oh my
the
God.
last time we redid the code, it was all about engaging the neighborhoods
it was, I know.
and
I
having
wasn't involved in the code part.
neighborhood-specific meetings
Yeah,
in
the-
2003 and 2005.
The comp plan, when I came on, I mean, that first year, I think it went to 6 different meetings.
Right.
Yeah. The second round with the comp plan, I was a consultant, handled a lot of that, and staff was somewhat set.
I don't remember any of
There
them,
was
any,
door-to-door outreach for the zoning code, I'm pretty sure.
There's no perfect way, but your role in this is that, whatever the recommendation is to council, and I think it's not, if you go back, Kate, to the defining features for, so I think that these, I would say to the folks in the neighborhoods, you want to change these, what do you think? Have these been working? Where I see your contribution is that the 3-page, guidelines, and saying, has this been a valid tool, or could it be tweaked? And I think there's ways it could be.
But we also, I think we have to be careful with the guidelines, if we change them, that we change them for all 3 districts.
That's right. And so so the general guidelines, the 3 pages apply to all 3 districts. So do I end up, which is the cart, which is the horse, and we're trying to figure that out. But, I mean, some have said, well, just simply advertise that you're reviewing it and take what comments you get. I don't, I want to be straightforward with everything, but you hopefully will figure that out. And, but those are your 3 historic conservation districts and your responsibilities within them. And I did, like I said, on that last slide you saw, we don't get a lot. I actually predicted, I thought Martha Jeff would be the place we'd be seeing a lot happening, and it certainly is where we see the most, but a lot of people do buying properties over there and not seeking to alter them, so it's been a good thing. And if you have any questions, that's your 15-minute training on conservation.
I have a question. Did I hear you correctly that a survey would be 100,000 for a neighborhood?
It's, so to do, sorry.
Just to do the Belmont.
The South
Yeah,
Belmont.
South Belmont's 1,100 properties, and if you figure 100 to 120, that's the rough budget for just to do a survey per property. And that would be huge.
What do they do with it? What's
But
the
like
action?
Woolen Mills was done by a graduate student and there was some professional review after that, and it was paid for by a small group of people, and I don't think they paid 100,000. It was neighbors within the district.
And that's that distinction of if the
And we-
neighborhood wants to do it and coordinate, that's one thing. For me to go in and say, the city of Charlottesville wants to complete a historic survey of this neighborhood, I would have to follow the parameters by, if this were to
What are the
be-
parameters?
So there's, when you're doing things have changed as far as what DHR, and I think sometimes, some of this is that where surveys have occurred, or they've allowed a district and folks said, well, I didn't vote, or things like that. So to the city's policy, and I think this came out of the Woolen Mills, the tension that was associated with that, is that if somebody wants to do a historic district, before we even do that we need to do a survey. So it had been, like Rugby Road is not a National Register district, and the survey was, although I think Jen Halleck helped out with that one, but the neighbors had done it. But, so you had the qualifications and they did it. But to just simply as a sort of rule of thumb, if I, the city preservation guy, went in and said, we're going to survey South Belmont, I would have to budget that as $100,000, given the, if
What
there was
does the
someone else who
survey
would do it for
entail?
less.
Is it a house survey and a land survey? Or-
No, it is and in fact, this is, the direction things have gone in the past. If you read a National Register, so I was kind of laughing because only an attorney can read those things and not fall asleep.
Oh, no, I'm queued up on the city's website right now, looking at all of them for our ADC districts,
So they're really,
or actually all the districts. So I could email any of these
Yeah.
to any of you.
Where is
Staff has access to them.
Well-
They're basically like a page for each property. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's actually what I sent to everybody on the Ridge Street Church. It's that one-page summary that's done. I don't know how much work goes into it, and I don't know what it costs. But I know some of these have done in the past, last time I was by graduate students.
Right.
Architectural historian, graduate students
Yeah.
at UVA in architecture. So that cost is just crazy.
Yeah.
Where is the Woolen Mills survey?
so
'Cause- sorry.
to answer David's
A
question.
good question. I
so
don't see it.
The thing is that the language is really dry, and it's things like this 2-story, 3-bay, American bond brick, double bonded, and you're like, I don't know what it's almost entirely architecture. There's
Well, there's history on it.
It's the narrative.
a narrative, but
I just sent one today to someone, 213 7th Street. It's, I think, the oldest property in the
Yes,
city.
yes, yes.
And I used to run a business there, and somebody thought I knew something about it. I'm like, I don't know anything, but it was historical. It was Charles Everett. He was, anyway,
Wait,
told a lot about the
213?
owner. 213 7th, the little White House
The White
across
House,
from
so
us.
that's
The Everett
Cole's,
House.
Barksdale house, and it was built by John Coles.
No, that's not the same one. This one was built by Charles Everett, and it was down in Milton, and it was moved here, and it was in place by 1849.
I need to look.
I can send it to you. I just sent
Yeah.
it to somebody today. Anyway,
Wait, oh.
but
You mean
to
over
Carl's
here.
question, yeah. But to Carl's question,
Yes.
Woolen Mills is not on, the survey's not on our city website.
So one of the things we got to work on. There's a lot of stuff that's on there. There's a lot of stuff that's not.
And they're buried.
So,
Is it where?
It's buried in Laserfish, and the links don't bookmark to it.
But where?
You can't-
I'm there now.
So, hold on, so to answer some questions. So one, I just offered the South Belmont as an example of, if we did a survey, it wouldn't be inexpensive. The other side of this is that a lot of and I can you do this in our next learning circle, we have a lot of historic districts, not a lot, we have several historic districts that were surveyed in the 80s. So we have outdated Wortland Street, Ridge Street. Some of these need to be updated and need to be updated. Sherry's right. We probably could find some volunteers that could update them, but there's, that takes a lot of work and coordination, and but that's one means to an end. So I'm really looking at some point in time, I need to turn back and look at these older surveys that we've done, update them, bring things in, rather than trying to find additional neighborhoods, and that, I know that's sort of where some of the tension is now. For example, there's a corner up here at High Street. There's a couple blocks in that are not, you go east of the courthouse and north of Jefferson Street. That corner's not designated, and some really neat houses in there. So we have places that we could look. Carl, you had asked me about, now I can't remember your question.
Ron had a comment.
Ron?
Well, no, my particular comment is I actually would think the city doesn't need to go around finding places to list. I think if the neighborhoods want to be listed, they should come to the city and do it that way. I think it would be completely silly for us to go out and try to make more historic districts just because we would like to do that.
I don't think
my
that's,
personal
yeah,
opinion.
that's never happened.
Okay, well, that's what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
So
That's been a
It's
city
up to the
policy,
neighborhood.
and so I get asked that very often, why isn't 10th and Page a historic district? Why isn't Star Hill? Why isn't Rose Hill? And I've said, we've surveyed those, we have completed, the city's done its due diligence, if you will, but the question then becomes, if those, like Rose Hill, I met with the neighborhood, it wasn't a large group, but they were adamant. We don't want anything, but what about Burley High School? And that's what led to getting Burley on the National Register. So you do get results out of these things.
Can
but
they undo it?
In what way?
Could the neighborhood come at Woolen Mills and say, no, we don't want to be a
Well, that's a-
historical?
Yeah, so being on the National Register or not, it's almost like it doesn't really matter. Unless, now, and I be careful saying that, being on the National Register, yes, a property is eligible for rehabilitation tax credits, which have tremendous benefit. It also protects, from, if someone wanted to build a highway through the city of Charlottesville, they would have to, if there are state and federal dollars involved, they'd have to have a pretty darn good reason for bulldozing a historic neighborhood.
But could a historic district decide to dissolve itself?
So from
Yes.
at the National Register.
No, I'm not worried
No,
about the National
local.
Register. I'm
Well-
talking about in the city.
Right, and I'll answer both. I don't know. I think that a community could,
It's-
and also.
It's
like-
the same, it's a city code. It's just like 104 Stadium Road. It's like undoing an individually protected property, which we've had one recently, 104 Stadium, and they were heading
we
with
didn't undo that.
demolishing it. Well, we didn't, but
Yeah.
council did. But it's just a change in the city code, but it usually would come before us.
As a recommendation, right?
As a recommendation to council.
So any addition or
And then
deletion.
it's legislation for them, they would be amending their city code.
Right.
Okay.
It's called a zoning tax amendment, zoning map amendment. So because they're embedded, they're enshrined in our ordinance, they would have to change the text, and then they would have to change the map that reflects the.
So for, inside these historical districts, it is legally mandated, if you wanted to demolish a building, you had to come to the FAR, and then,
For a and I don't mean, for a local designated historic property, yes.
And
But
that
and then-
power comes
Yeah.
from the Code of Virginia.
If it's a
given-
contributing-
Localities are given the ability to designate historic resources and protect them in these very limited ways. And the most extreme way we can is by deciding whether something goes away or not with demolition.
So
And the
it-
rest is a little bit soft, as far as what our design guidelines are and how we legislate those districts.
The
that's why
National
your
Reg-
decisions-
The National Register, though,
No such thing. They take your plaque away.
Yeah.
And so that's
Yeah.
where, sort of to what Jerry was asking also is, so Workland Street right now, we're seeing arguably the diminution of its character.
Yep.
It's very possible that, I don't think DHR is proactive necessarily about it, but if there were an inquiry, they would, and I'd have to ask them, when we have demolitions of a certain scale, I usually talk, say, what do you guys think? I think that's probably one National Register district that's precariously perched, that they could delist it or compress it. But that wouldn't change what we do. The city council gets to determine any designation. They get the final say. And that's why any action that you all take is appealable to city council. They're the legislative body. And to sort of continue what Sherry was saying about the demolitions, you all didn't, in 144 Chancellor, you did not tell them they can't knock it down. What you determined was, based on the criteria in your guidelines, you do not, demolition would conflict with those guidelines, so that it would be inappropriate to allow that demolition. That was what you all decided. And so, because I've had people say, well, the BAR won't let them do it. I said, the BAR, this is what the BAR determined. And then in preparing the summary for council, what I made clear was, this is what, Mr. Blair, and I talk a lot, this is what they stated, and this is what the BAR's response to those things were. So I've laid that out. Council could very well, so they're being asked not to overturn or uphold the BAR. The council gets asked to approve or deny a COA. They're asked the same question you were asked. So, and that's why I make the comment about it's not rebuking the BAR. But if city council says, no, you can't knock it down, they can then appeal to the circuit court. And so they have that next step available to them. There's another provision in our code which allows someone to make the property available at market rate. And if someone offers to buy it and preserve, rehab the building. The thing is, that property it's one large property, and the schoolhouse is one of two structures. And so I'm like, well, I don't know exactly how that would apply. I'm
Would they
worried
have to
council's
split
gonna ask.
would they have to split the property?
And
Yeah.
they tried to do that before, and that was not
Yeah,
allowed, right?
yeah, back in 2013, they tried to do it when the demolition request was denied. And one of the things we didn't quite say out loud in the meeting was that, well, maybe this structure could be relocated somewhere, but that was not the request. Their request was to raise the building. So it's, I'm not gonna have easy answers for council, but that is the process, and that's what it's intended to do. And the same will likely apply to 1301 Workland. They could go through the steps and end up, nobody buys it, nobody offers to buy it, then they by right can raise that structure. So, so just letting you all know that process. I haven't had, Sherry, you probably had to deal with.
Riverdale.
Yeah, I haven't had to work with.
I've
deal with-
represented a party that was concerned there. We went through that process, and they were able to demolish it, and it doesn't exist
Yeah.
anymore.
But they left it an IPP, which was,
Because the
Yeah.
property.
trying to fix that.
I was just
Yes.
going to say, I think none of us want more DC districts unless the people in the neighborhoods want that, like if Belmont all of a sudden coalesced and said that. But I'd like for us, and maybe the Martha Jefferson Historic Conservation Renewal or whatever update is the opportunity, I'd like to revisit the individually protected properties. I looked on the code as you were talking. We have 75 in the city code, but 2 of them are no longer on there, 104 Stadium and then Riverdale. Those are the only
Right.
2 ones that I know of that have been
And then 415 10th got added,
Okay,
and,
so then we'd be up to 74.
Yeah, but-
And it's not, the number is really, it doesn't matter, but we haven't added any since I was last on the BAR. And I look around and in today's environment, it would be, we would most likely want the consent of the current owner. It just goes smoother that way. And for instance, like 500 Court Square is not. I mean, it would be difficult to demolish that, but I can see a time when somebody would buy a bunch of properties on Court Square, and it's a pretty significant property. I mean, there are lots of, there are incredibly modest properties that are individually protected because they're really old, or like the Hartman's Mill, there's a core of it that's old. We don't even know exactly what's old, but we know it's really old. And then there are very obvious properties, a lot in the mall, that are not individually protected. The Violet Crown aside, there are some significant properties in the city that would be like missing teeth if, the current owner got a buyer or was interested in demolishing themselves, and it would, this is gonna happen because of this development code we adopted. And I'm not saying this is a pure preservation, I'm just saying, that this is what we're about. How much do we preserve going forward? How much do we fight to preserve? How much do we say we don't need? The Violet Crown being an example, I'm not trying to defend. I literally was late for the pre-meeting because I was leaving my office. I was introduced to somebody on the back porch next to mine. They are people that live in North Downtown, and they were talking about the demolition of the Violet Crown. And they said their entire neighborhood's up on, because we demolished the
Yes.
Violet Crown. I'm so tired of hearing this. Like any of us really wanted to demolish the movie theater and take away a viable business and destroy the downtown mall and everything. But, I think, I'm glad you did this tonight because it explains to the public what we do and where our power comes from and how limited it is.
It is.
And it only, an application like that only comes to us when an owner brings it to us, or a prospective owner who has the permission of the owner. In Mr. Levine's case, we didn't initiate that. We're not making a decision about the current use of the building or the viability of that use or the viability of the building or anything else. We're in a reactive position, almost passive, frankly, on some of these applications.
This is
So,
where
anyway.
moving forward, it would be what Arlington County does in working with Kelly Brown, who some of you have met. They didn't have a traditional downtown. It was a rural place, and
And they have nodes, but
they
not
have
really.
node, right?
Yeah.
And so many of their historic structures have specific preservation plans for the building. So when something occurs adjacent to it, there's a special code that's used in that, and so they don't look at things as districts. So one thing, Jenny Keller has floated this long ago, was we have some really pristine places in town, and you can literally go to them and say, for the next 15 years, you don't have to come to the BAR. Can we all agree that this is, what you're going to do? But I think we're at a point in time, and I know I've said before that, you've used the term, we're squeezing jello. We can't hold on to everything, and I think we really have to identify what are these really important resources and features, and because you end up you're saving everything, and it almost means nothing. But we do have an opportunity to revisit it. But yes, to clear to everybody out there, you all have the power that's given to you by the city council, and if someone wants to get out of a district or change something, they can make that request. The last, we did have a conservation district proposed. Ralph Brown wanted to create one to honor his father, who built, and there's close to 200 of those cinder block buildings all around town that his father built in the 50s and 60s. And but there's a collection of them over at 12th and Rosser. And a conservation district was proposed. You all endorsed it. The Planning Commission endorsed the zoning text amendment to do it. But the last step was, I've got 6 property owners that need to affirm that they want to be in a district, and they weren't able to produce that. And I had to say, I can't take this to council unless you have 6 people say they want to do this. So, so that's some of that the seriousness, I think, with which we take it in here is like, if you want to be a district, you better really mean it, because it's not I'm not going to do it for just a few. And, the first thing I say when people call me, well, you don't understand. I go, yes, I do. I have to go to the BAR myself. So, my house is designated. I understand it. You all are on this board because you have some relationship or connection to historic properties, certainly the two of you. So I think it's important for people to understand that. I've said, I think I once even said to council that, this is not some rogue group that I decided to get together and decide what everybody does in the city. You appointed us, you appointed them, and then you gave us these. So, but thank you for your time tonight. You were excellent students.
Thank you, Jeff.
I will create a certificate suitable for framing. And
Is there a quiz we need to take now?
she's good at that, yeah. All right,
I
thank you.
heard
think
it
we
was new.
adjourn.
Pass, fail.
Oh my God, 13 messages from my family, like, what is going on?
Motion to adjourn.
Adjourn. So moved.
Second.
All in
right.
favor, stand up.
All in favor?
Ron, my son's moving into a new
Everything
apartment,
okay?
6 blocks north.
Thank you for the.
Yeah, you're welcome.